Hello, Facebook. Good afternoon, and welcome to a apparently very laid-back edition of Deleted Scenes. It's been a couple of weeks. Last week, things happened in ministry, and Monday just ended up being a day I wasn't available, and so we didn't have Deleted Scenes. So this week we're going to be doing a twofer, and so we're going to be following up on my sermon from last week on peace, and from yesterday on joy. And I thought this would give me an opportunity to talk about something that I've wanted to bring up in the last two sermons, but just hasn't really worked out. And that is the fact that these sermons are kind of interconnected. And first, let me explain the third, obviously the sermons are connected, they're in a series. The themes are interwoven and interconnected. And first, let me explain the title that I used for this. Called it the Four Horsemen of Advent, and the reason for that is because there's a famous passage called the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and in the book of Revelation, John describes these four horsemen. They have different colors, and they ride out. Each one they ride out in sequence, and they represent these different forces. And in one interpretation of the book of Revelation, the one that you'll find in Left Behind, each one represents a separate judgment. So the first horse rides out, and he is white, and his horse is white. And he rides out and conquers. And then the red horseman rides out, and he represents war, and he makes people kill each other. And then this is in Revelation 6. And then a black horse rides out, and he represents famine. And then finally, the pale horse rides out, and he represents death. And so one way of reading that is that these four things happen in sequence. So first there's a judgment of conquest, then there's a judgment of war, then there's a judgment of famine, and then there's a judgment of death. And when I was in seminary, I learned a different way to read that made a lot more sense to me. Because here's the thing. If death is the fourth horseman, then death is its own category here, right? So that would mean if these are separate judgments, that there was conquest, and then there was war. So there was conquest without war, and then there was famine. But all of this happened before people started dying. That doesn't make any sense for death to be a separate category. Oh, come on. Come on. Oh, you can still hear me? Try not to do anything very embarrassing while I wait for that response. Okay, all right, so I'm going to keep going. Apparently, according to my wife, we are still good. So she's commenting in here. Sorry, I have this thing up on my screen that says, trying to reconnect. Due to poor wireless connection, your video has been paused. Consider moving to find a better signal, or you can end the broadcast. My wife has informed me via chat that everything's fine, so I'm just going to keep going. Sorry for the pause. Now, where was I? I was talking about the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. One of those days. Anyway. So the thing is, the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse don't make sense as a sequence, but they do make sense as four different parts of the same series of events. Because if someone goes out to conquer, what's going to happen? They're going to fight wars. What's the consequence of war? Famine. And what's the consequence of all of those things put together? Death. And so you're seeing the same thing from four different sides. Now, here's the interesting thing about the themes of Advent is that not everybody agrees on what order you do the themes in. There's two that are solid. You start with hope, and then the third week is joy. That's pretty consistent, and because joy gets its own special color of candle for reasons that I still haven't researched. And so you have hope and joy, but peace and love are interchangeable. And the reason, and really you could do all four of them in any order you want, and the reason is because these different themes are all interdependent. And this is something I haven't gotten to draw out a ton in my sermons, and I would like to, is the fact how these are all so interdependent. For instance, when we talked about peace, shalom, and how it means this deeper sense of everything being made complete, everything being made whole, all of our relationships restored, all of our bodies restored, our hearts restored, our societies restored. And that's what hope, or that's what peace really means. Okay, so there's peace. But that peace is a promise that will be fulfilled in the future, right? And so what is the word that we use for that feeling we have towards a hope towards a good thing that's going to happen in the future? We call that hope. So we hope in a future of peace. And when we believe that this peace is coming, that has an emotional reaction for us in the present, and that emotional reaction is joy. And so there's this connection to all of this, that we hope in a future peace. We also believe in a present peace, and our reaction to that hope, to the hope about future peace, is joy. We're happy about that, and our response to the peace we receive in the present is also joy. And so all of these are interconnected. You cannot separate one of them out, and they are all tied to the coming of Jesus. And so it's kind of like the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, where you can't pull them out. You're actually looking at the same thing from multiple sides. And so if you have hope, the hope is going to help bring you peace, and hope is going to help make you joyful. And if you have joy, it will help to make you hopeful, and it will help to give you peace, because you know how things are going to work out. You know how you believe that God is going to fulfill things. And if you find peace, if God creates peace in your life, you are going to be joyful, and you are going to be hopeful. And all of these things go together. Now, there's an obvious piece that we're missing in this conversation because I haven't preached on it yet, and that is love. And love has a central role in how all three of these fit together. But I haven't thought that part through yet because we haven't gotten there yet, and I'm working on that sermon now. But I do think it's helpful for us to think about it this way, that these things are all connected. And there's two ways you could look at that. You could then feel like, okay, I have to master all three of these, and that's a lot. But actually, I think that it's more helpful to focus on one of them, because one of them leads you to the others. So some of us struggle with being hopeful, right? Some of us struggle with believing that the future will be better than the past, that tomorrow will be better than yesterday. Well, that's your big struggle. Then maybe don't focus on that. Maybe focus on being joyful. Focus on your present and what there is to be joyful about in God's activity in your life today, right? Focus on, and a lot of that is being grateful. A good way to be hopeful, though, a good path to hope, is to focus on being grateful, because if you realize what God is doing in your present, and you kind of keep track for long enough, and you start to develop a pattern of God's behavior, that will make you hopeful about the future. Maybe if you struggle with peace, with feeling whole, then what you should do is you should focus on hope and believing that God will fulfill on his promises. And if what you struggle with is joy, then and being happy about where things are, and being positive about what God is doing in the world, then maybe you need to focus on hope. Maybe you need to focus on peace. But any one of these elements can kind of bring you into this feedback loop where they build into each other, and they can give you the real spirit of Christmas. If you want to use that kind of cliched phrase, they can give you that mindset of the gospel. So I guess that would be my encouragement to you this week. If you're struggling with hope, joy, peace, and love, focus on one of them and see how developing that one trait or that one mindset can build up the others and can encourage you and hopefully get you to a place where Christmas, or you feel ready for Christmas. You feel ready to rejoice in the coming of our Savior. All right, that's all I have. I really hope that the broadcast continued to be clear all the way through, and I haven't just been talking to myself for the past few minutes. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are local, we would love for you to join us. We have several things that are going on for Christmas. On Sunday afternoon, the 22nd at 3:30, we're going to be having a Blue Christmas service, which is a service specifically designed for people who are mourning, or people who are depressed, or people who have some reason not to be happy during the Christmas season, because Christmas is here to answer those feelings. So if you are struggling with Christmas, then we encourage you to join us next Sunday at 3:30 here at the church. And then, of course, we have 2 Christmas Eve services on Christmas Eve. There's one at 5 p.m. and one at 7 p.m. We'd love for you to join us. If you are, if you're not local, either way, we'd love for you to come back and tune in again next week on Monday afternoon when we will be talking about love. Thanks so much for listening and watching, and God bless.